Principal's main job is to create a positive school climate. But how do you do that when we're going through a virtual storm? The principal is the big dog on campus, who often has to play a serious role to showcase order, structure, and discipline. Even in the movies, principals are portrayed as cold, dull, and oftentimes intimidating. However, during a pandemic, these stereotypes that hold up the principal facade are removed, such as private offices, front desk assistants, and suits. Today, like all of us, principals are working from their dining room tables, managing their families, and wearing house slippers. The school has entered the home of the most powerful position on campus, leading to vulnerabilities that traditionally will make a principal look weak. Now these vulnerabilities are what connects them to their staff, parents, and students. Now, I wasn't expecting to speak about the importance of principals, as this is a no-brainer topic. I was actually interviewing educators for a video around creating a positive school climate, which I do think I will achieve by the end of this video. The conversation that took me off a beaten path was with Maya Stewart, a middle school principal at DC International, who framed principaling in a way that makes sense for the time we're in and the culture we need to build for the future.
Principaling generally is not for the faint of heart, but right now it does require creativity. I think it also requires a level of vulnerability that some principals maybe didn't tap into previously. I think it requires us to cry and say that we don't know and be honest with ourselves. And that's hard. I grew up where the principal was like this person in this office with this really antique wooden furniture. And if they came into the hallway, you kind of scattered. I'm not that principal. And I have to model for other people and families, right? Like what principalship looks like now, right? I have blue hair, right? This is not, I'm not what maybe 55 years ago a middle school principal would look like. And leaning into the ability to shape the role and be different is important, right? If a student hops on Zoom and they're talking about a TikTok video, I might do the dance with them, right? So that connection, or I think a part of it is the requirement when we're being vulnerable is to break down some of the pretension around the role, right? You don't have to be just a figurehead. You just don't have to be the person that sits in the office. You don't have to be the person who only lays down the law. You can tell jokes, you can have fun, you can, like I said earlier, you can cry, you can say what's not working. And at the same time, you can be strong, right? A part of principaling is being the maestro. This is a symphony orchestra that you are in charge of, and whatever sounds come out of it, for good and for the worse, you are responsible. So you are being a vulnerable maestro of a very complex orchestra right now.
Ms. Stewart was a former English teacher who grew up in DC area. Her school is an IB school, which are schools often known for their rigor, not their emotional empathy. They have been virtual throughout this year and will continue virtual into the spring. This past weekend, she graduated from an executive leadership program at Georgetown University, and she mentioned to me that she'll be giving a speech. And I asked her about what, and she said radical self-care.
I think it looks different at every level, and I think it looks different for every person. I have a dog, and and I have a spouse who's not here currently, but these are the human living beings that rely on me. And when I'm one of my friends, her expression is crispy. When I'm burnt around the edges, it shows, it rubs off on them. And we're living in a pandemic, so there's not really any place that they can go to like relieve steam. If I had kids, it'd be the same thing. So whatever I'm taking in through this computer, I'm giving off to my immediate circle, including my friends. And so for me, that means I sign out of Google Hangouts, right? We're a Google Suite school, so we live and die by Hangouts. It's the new AOL Messenger, so to speak. So if something needs to happen fast or it's urgent, everyone goes to Hangouts. I sign out at 5 o'clock. That's it. Y'all have my cell phone number, so if something's on fire, call me. But no, I'm not checking email. And on the weekend, unless there's a pending project, I'm not opening my inbox because I need to tune into me. It means going to therapy every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, right? I will tell my team, all right, folks, shutting down for the day. I'm going to therapy. Now, in person, that meant like driving to my therapist's office. But right now it's like turning on a different tab and going to therapy, but still blocking that time so that I can restore myself and that I'm able to like think clearly. I think the one thing that's undersold about principling is the cognitive lift that is happening on you on a daily basis, right? So I can look at my calendar and I may have 6 meetings, 4 of them back to back, and they're about totally different things. We could be talking about scheduling, hiring, what's middle school math doing, and then so the staff's mental wellness, right? And that requires you to unlock and open different files of your brain, and it can be exhausting. So if you don't like allow the files to close and marinate and settle, you could just be running on steam day after day.
I asked, what is radical self-care? Because I knew this is something that educators and myself needed to hear. What is interesting about radical self-care is that it makes a great argument as a foundational priority in order to create a healthy school climate. School climate is the most critical job of the principal, creating an environment where students feel safe, supported, engaged, and accepted. According to many child development and school leadership experts, the way to do that is looking outward, getting feedback from your constituents, adjusting to the demands, and looking at consistent data that can set the expectation for everyone else involved. But after speaking with Ms. Stewart, there was this aha moment that for me, school climate is potentially not something you create, it's something that you reflect. How you feel about your work, manage your emotions, and be mindful about what your body is telling you creates a frequency that radiates with your staff, students, so they can emulate within themselves. Principals are often a link between expectations from admin and policy to offering directions to parents and teachers. A part of this dominant culture comes from being the link that holds everything together. This expectation leads to anxiety, making it hard to celebrate wins due to the demands.
I've really been trying to like undo what I think that some of the things I have internalized from dominant culture as a Black school leader, Black female school leader, because that's a huge distinction. I think that people say this to me, have said this to me for a long time, but it never stuck until this year, that I go quickly to what needs to be fixed. I'm already like, this is great, it's over, on to the next thing. And I think that while that can be beneficial, I do think that I have modeled for my team efficiency and feedback cycles and like action. I don't think that I have modeled for them celebration. We don't like sit in our victories enough, right? Like last year obviously ended less than ideally. And we had a professor in June was like, you survived. And, I'm like, yes, but this data point wasn't good and that data point wasn't good. And it's just not good. And even my leadership team is like, we survived, right? We endured an unprecedented, that phrase, can't wait for that phrase to die this year, but we endured an unprecedented school year. And then this one continued to be one for the record books. And so I think that the program really urged me to stop and smell the roses, right? Celebrate the victories. It's so easy to say what's not working or what's imperfect, but we have a subset of kids who are thriving, who are happy, who love and feel connected to our school. And with schools closing, not just in this region, but across the country, left and right, that's something to be celebrated. It's awesome. So I have to like sit in that. And that's the true test. That's really hard.
In the last episode, we talked about a teacher exodus. But looking at August data from the National Association of Secondary School Principals, 45% of principals report that the pandemic working conditions are accelerating their plans to leave the profession. Many respondents attribute their pending departure to chaos, inconsistency emerging from toxic accountability measures. Ms. Stewart is an important ambassador to the principal profession because normalizing radical self-care is necessary for her colleagues to see, because many of them feel uncomfortable to create boundaries within their district. But in a normal school year, playing this invincible principal card might be okay and sustainable. But in a pandemic year, principals need to be the example, prioritizing self-care so that their staff and students do the same. Thank you for watching This Week in Education. Please share with the principal who you believe needs to check in with themselves and be okay with putting themselves first.